Hi guys, this is Recognize the Paradox. I finally got around to remaking the non-overlapping Magisteria video, which as you can see I have renamed the Testable Gods, and that's because that's what this video is about. It's about the difference between gods that are testable and gods that are not testable. Basically gods that you could potentially prove exist or disprove exist, and gods that you could never really do either with. When you get on the topic of the existence of God, what you have to realize is that everyone has their own concept of what God is. And that's really bad for communication, but unfortunately, that's the circumstances we find ourselves living in, so we have to find ways to work around it. And the best way to do that is to establish from the beginning of the conversation exactly how you're defining God. And that way you don't get into arguments about specific gods, like they're using a different term for God than you are. Otherwise, it's chaos. I know this from experience. And then people get really mad as well, and that's not too fun. So yeah, this will tell you from the start if you're wasting your time or if you can actually have a clear resolution on the topic of God's existence or non-existence. So what do I mean by a God being testable or not? It's actually rather simple. I think we can all agree that there are ways for us to verify the difference between true and false claims. For instance, if I claim that the Earth goes around the sun, there are calculations and experiments that can be run to show that this is in fact true. But for some reason, a lot of people have this idea that the same tests we use to discover the world can't be used to discover a God. The claim is that religion and science are studying different aspects of the world. Religion studying the spiritual, science studying the material, and therefore cannot comment on the findings of the other. This idea is called non-overlapping magisteria. It's a term coined by Stephen Jay Gould, who is a scientist. And while I agree with the idea in principle, I disagree with the claim that religion is only spiritual. Most religions make material claims about the world, which we as scientists can then test and either prove or disprove. This is where the idea of a testable God comes in. If you claim that a God exists, and that part of its existence is that it performed some action in the world, then we can test to see if such an action did occur. And if it didn't, then that God doesn't exist. So, for example, let's look at an old god that most people don't believe in anymore. Apollo. Apollo was the Greco-Roman god of the sun, and was said to pull the sun across the sky with a chariot. Yeah, there's no chariot in front of the sun. We now understand that various other forces are at work in the sun's rising and setting, namely the spinning of the earth. So Apollo cannot exist. Obvious. This sort of testing can be done on any god that interferes in the world directly. The sort of gods this would not extend to are ones whose supposed actions are indistinguishable from natural phenomena, like a god who creates storms, but does so indiscriminately. You can never prove or disprove that there isn't a god behind the storms, but really, why would you bother believing in it? Why not just understand the natural processes that go into creating a storm and believe in them? But I digress. So that's the basic idea behind testable versus non-testable gods. Just to give you guys a feel for which gods go in which category, most religions follow testable gods, gods that are personal and act in the world through miracles or some other outlet, like prayer is pretty common. And any god that responds to prayers is automatically a testable god. Prayer has actually been studied. Scientists stopped studying it because the overall results of the studies were that prayer did not have any effect. And it's kind of a waste of time and resources to sit there studying something when you're not going to get any results. As for non-testable gods, a creator god is in this category, sometimes called the god of the deists. This is the god who just started the universe and left it alone. It doesn't interfere, it doesn't care about us on a personal level, it just made us and then left us. It's indistinguishable from nature. It's neither provable nor disprovable. Although, let me make this really clear, you could certainly still argue about the probability or improbability of such gods, using various forms of logic and reason, but you could never for certain say that they did or did not exist. So yeah, that's pretty much it. When you're getting into a debate about whether God exists or not, just make sure you're defining God before you start to argue. You might be able to point out to your fellow conversationalist that their God cannot possibly exist because one or more of its characteristics is not true. Or save yourself some time in the case where you could neither prove nor disprove a God. Happy discussions, everybody!